Okay, picture this. Imagine inventing the fundamental technologies that would literally go on to power the entire modern world, only to spend your final days feeding pigeons, living in absolute, heartbreaking poverty. I mean, it's wild, right? Why did the true father of radio and the absolute mastermind behind alternating current electricity meet such a tragic end? Well, today we're going to look at the harsh, unforgiving reality of power dynamics, because as we're going to see, naive brilliance is simply never enough to secure your legacy.
Now this brings us to one of the most famous rivalries in human history. When we look at Nikola Tesla versus Thomas Edison, we aren't just looking at two scientists tinkering in a lab. We are looking at a profound, fundamental clash of strategies. On one side, you have Nikola Tesla, who was arguably the more brilliant, pure inventor, right? But he died entirely broke. And on the flip side, you have Thomas Edison, an incredibly astute businessman and just a relentless publicist, who is completely immortalized in our history books. So how did Edison win so decisively?
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to discover the seventh law of power through the tragic rivalry of Nikola Tesla versus Thomas Edison. We're going to learn exactly why taking credit is absolutely vital in power dynamics. We'll be using the text of the 48 laws to unpack exactly where Tesla went wrong and, more importantly, what you need to do to avoid his fate.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today's Explainer. We'll start with the tragedy of Tesla, then examine the jungle dynamic of hunters versus vultures. From there, we'll study the art of taking credit, look at how to stand on giants' shoulders by using history, and finally, we'll wrap up with the masterful reversal.
Section 1. The Tragedy of Tesla. Genius without power.
So, this brings us directly to the rather ruthless law that governed Tesla's downfall. Law 7 states, "Get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit." The judgment from our source text reads beautifully, but honestly it's pretty brutal. It says, use the wisdom, knowledge, and legwork of other people to further your own cause. Not only will such assistance save you valuable time and energy, it will give you a godlike aura of efficiency and speed. In the end, your helpers will be forgotten and you will be remembered. Never do yourself what others can do for you.
Let's look at the timeline here, because it really builds a clear picture of systemic theft throughout Tesla's career. You see, Tesla harbored this fatal illusion. He genuinely believed that science, dealing with pure facts, was somehow above petty rivalries and office politics. Because of this mindset, back in 1883, a young Tesla offered to completely redesign Edison's primitive dynamos. Edison promised him 50 grand if he could do it. So, Tesla labored day and night, succeeded a year later, and when he finally asked for the money, Edison literally told him, "Tesla, you don't understand our American humor," and simply offered him a tiny raise. Edison's company took all the credit. Then, fast forward to 1888, George Westinghouse, the guy who had funded Tesla's alternating current research, was facing a hostile takeover. He essentially guilt-tripped Tesla into giving up his incredibly generous royalty contract, buying out patents worth $12 million for a mere $216,000. And then, finally, in 1899, Guglielmo Marconi famously broadcast a signal across the English Channel, cementing himself as the inventor of radio. But get this, he used a patent Tesla had already filed in 1897. Time and time again, opportunistic businessmen divested Tesla of his riches, his patents, and his rightful credit.
Moving on to Section 2, Hunters versus Vultures, the jungle dynamic.
Our source material makes it incredibly clear that the world of power operates on the exact same dynamics as a literal jungle, and it uses this brilliant, stark metaphor, the vulture. Think about it. In the jungle, there are those who live by hunting and killing. These are your imaginative, hardworking types. But there are also vast numbers of vultures who live entirely off the hunting of others. While you're slaving away on a project, there are vultures circling above, just waiting to figure out how to thrive off your creativity. Take the explorer Vasco Núñez de Balboa, for instance. Back in the 16th century, after facing just countless hardships, he finally discovered evidence of the great and wealthy Incan Empire, El Dorado. But here's his mistake. He didn't keep it quiet. Word spread like wildfire, and a soldier in his own army, a total vulture named Francisco Pizarro, actually helped get Balboa beheaded for treason. Pizarro then went on to take all the riches Balboa had spent years trying to find.
So what's the actual takeaway here? Well, it's a twofold lesson derived directly from the text. First, you have to understand that the credit for a creation is just as important as the creation itself. You have to secure that credit and actively keep others from stealing it by being incredibly vigilant. Keep your creations totally quiet until you are 100% sure there are no vultures circling. And second, you gotta flip the script. Time is precious, and life is short. Instead of running yourself ragged trying to do absolutely everything on your own like Tesla did, conserve your forces, pounce on the work of others to save your own energy.
All right, Section 3, the art of taking credit. Let's look at how to actually profit from the labor of others. Get a load of this quote from Thomas Edison himself. He proudly declared, "I've stolen a lot myself, but I know how to steal." I mean, the audacity, right? But Edison was the exact polar opposite of Tesla. Our text points out that Edison wasn't actually much of a scientific thinker at all. He famously said he had absolutely no need to be a mathematician because he could always just hire one. He spotted the trends, hired the absolute best minds in the field to do all the heavy lifting, and then smoothly put his name on the final product.
Now, my absolute favorite example of this is the legendary artist Peter Paul Rubens. Late in his career, he was just completely deluged with requests for paintings. To handle the volume, he created what was essentially a vast production line in his studio. He employed dozens of outstanding painters. One guy would specialize in painting robes, another solely painted backgrounds. You get the idea. But here is the pure genius part. Whenever an important client visited the studio, Rubens would literally shoo his hired painters out for the day. While the client watched from a balcony, Rubens would work on the canvas with this incredible energy and speed. And the client? They'd leave in complete awe of this prodigious genius who could paint masterpieces so quickly. He used the skills of others to give himself a godlike aura of power. It's brilliant.
Next up, Section 4, Standing on Giants' Shoulders, Using the Past. Here's the really beautiful part of this law. You don't merely have to rely on parasitizing your contemporaries. You can actually use the past. It's this vast, dusty storehouse of knowledge just waiting for you to tap into. Look at these towering historical figures. Isaac Newton famously said he stood on the shoulders of giants. A huge part of his aura of genius was his shrewd ability to take the insights of ancient, medieval, and Renaissance scientists and just build upon them. And William Shakespeare? The guy borrowed plots, characterizations, and even direct dialogue from the ancient writer Plutarch. Shakespeare knew nobody surpassed Plutarch in subtle psychology, so he just took it. And think about how many subsequent writers have, in turn, plagiarized from Shakespeare. Using the past makes you look like a total genius, even when you're really just a very clever borrower.
The great strategist Otto von Bismarck hit the nail on the head here. He said, "Fools say that they learn by experience. I prefer to profit by others' experience." Slogging through life making your own endless mistakes is just an incredible waste of time and energy. All the historians, the kings, the queens, the absolute masters of strategy, they've already learned the hard lessons. Their knowledge is quite literally just gathering dust. So use their armies of the past to fight your battles today.
Which brings us to Section 5, the masterful reversal. When to actually share the limelight. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the exception to the rule. True power requires immense situation awareness, right? We can't just blindly follow a rule without knowing when to break it. Notice how the relationship between Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger totally illustrates the danger of taking credit too early. President Richard Nixon's historic visit to the People's Republic of China would never have come off, nor been nearly as successful without the incredibly deft diplomacy of Henry Kissinger. Kissinger did the massive, heavy legwork, but when the time came to take the credit, Kissinger adroitly stepped back and let Nixon take the lion's share. Now, why on earth would he do that? Because of the rule of the reversal. There are times when taking credit is actually super unwise. If your power is not firmly established, you'll just seem to be pushing people out of the limelight, and you'll probably be accused of deception. Kissinger knew he had a master above him. He knew better than to jeopardize his short-term standing by being greedy. He played the game flawlessly, guys. He took credit for the work of those below him, while graciously giving credit for his own labors to the master above him. The lesson? Your position must be entirely unshakable before you step fully into the light. All right, let's wrap this up. Conclusion: mastering the 7th law. To really master this law, we always have to remember the tragic fate of Nikola Tesla. Doing all the work yourself will merely exhaust you and leave you totally vulnerable to the vultures. In the realm of power, the credit for creation is often far more important than the creation itself. You absolutely must be willing to leverage the skills, the knowledge, and the labor of others to create your own aura of godlike efficiency. So I want to leave you with a final provocative thought today. Take a hard look at your own life and your career. Are you actively building your own empire? Or are you, like Tesla, just doing all the heavy lifting for someone else's? Are you the hunter about to be swooped on? Or are you finally learning how to survive the jungle? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. If you found this breakdown of power dynamics insightful and want to master the rest of the rules of the game, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and visit our website for more structured, in-depth explainers into the 48 laws of power. I'll see you next time.